Good morning, Lorri.
How are you doing?
Great. It's another chilly day here up in Vermont. No
Ah,
fireplace going yet, but it is chilly. I mean, the
yeah.
fireplace was going last week, but
Is
not
it
today.
peak leaf peeping season in Vermont?
On this side of the mountain, it's peak. I think on the other side of the mountain, it's over already.
Yeah.
But we're like peak right now for probably next week or
Till the
so.
big wind blows.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which has kind of been this week. Like that's the last 3 days have been rainy and kind of windy, which is
Yeah.
kind of killing the peak a little early, I think, in my book, but I'm
Yeah.
hoping it holds on for a little longer. Like it's amazing to go for a ride. Like I don't take a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
photos when I ride, but like I've actually been posting photos. Like
Yeah.
because it's but then I'm like I don't take photos because it doesn't nearly capture what it is
Hmm.
I'm seeing. And I also don't want to stop and take a photo because I'm like, it's
Yeah.
amazing
It's
to
so
look at.
beautiful. So you ride, take photos while you ride, but yeah, Vermont is my best friend in college was Vermont. And so I remember I went home with her for fall break one year and she's like, yeah, I live on a farm. Sorry, Bob, you're not. Linda beat you. Um, good morning, Maggie. Anyways, so I go to my best friend Linda's house, and it's dark because we drove from Ithaca, New York. And what was the name of that diner that was halfway between Vermont and I bet you know it. I can't think of it because I'm old.
Oh,
Anyways, I wake up the next morning and I'm in like a little child's bedroom. And because that's what happens when we leave for college, our parents just keep this memorial to us until they decide to kick us out altogether. And I look out the window and there's literally a cow outside my window. So she is a farmer. She's a dairy farmer. But I remember being in Stowe and being in Burlington, and we did get lucky with peak season. It was gorgeous. Um, but October, I was thinking about this morning. October is my roughest month, I think, and I was thinking about circadian cycles and our circadian cycle that allows us to be alert in the morning and to sleep at night, and that's a normal process. And exercise can aid it, and nutrition can aid it, and I hate alarm clocks. I was thinking about that. I don't set them in the summer because I naturally wake up at sunrise and I like that. I
mhm.
don't like being startled awake. And in October, dude, look at these circles.
It's rough.
I'm looking really rough over here this morning because I have to set an alarm to wake up. Yeah, so this period between like Halloween and Valentine's Day, least favorite time of the year for many reasons, but one of them is I have to set a freaking alarm clock and it makes me really sad. But
Well, you can get
anyways,
one of those light alarm clocks.
yes,
You should get
which
one
is
of
good.
those
I
that
know
like
I have
start to
one.
light the room up, over a period of time, be
Yeah,
more natural. I would do
they
that.
do
My
good.
wife would hate it,
I know.
because
I had one
I
at one
wake
point.
up before her typically. Well, actually, she now
The
wakes up
only
before me.
problem though is I sleep with a silk eye mask to make me, look as young as I do. But Donna Elder's here. Hey Donna. And Amy. And anyways, yeah, so I was thinking about circadian cycle. So in my little fishing village I live in, I always feel like there's 14 people that live here, but there's about 8,000. But in the village itself, there are some city parking lots and they're up a hill because I'm at the seaside. So I have to go up this hill. And this morning, last night, I decided to charge my car. I found the one free car charger in this village. There's two car chargers in this village. One is free. It really is free, which is amazing. And it was free. And there's technically a 4-hour limit, but I'm a rule breaker, so I parked overnight. I was like, I'm gonna charge the whole darn car, and because it's a slow charger, it's not a fast charger. And and it's the first time I've done that. So I snuck up the hill this morning, hoping I didn't, get a ticket for anything. And as I was coming in the parking lot, there was a crew of men working on a sidewalk. Now this is very hilly. Think like Cinque Terre, hilly seaside village. And you know how hard it must be to make a sidewalk on a hill, by the way. And the whole crew, they had just laid this concrete, and there was one man who was measuring, and so he was going every interval and measuring, and there was another man with a level. You don't even think about these things. And part of me says, oh, they take pride in their work, and part of me is like, no, they don't get paid for the job. It's not right. So you can leave that up to whatever school of thought you have. But I was thinking about the precision that goes into this sidewalk, and also the fact that I never think about it, right? So what is the power of observation? I happened to go by at 7 o'clock this morning as they had just poured some concrete and see this process that made me think, oh yeah, you need a sidewalk that's level so you don't fall down. And you need it to be a certain width so you have enough room to walk and pass someone else and all of these things that we don't think about. which made me think, this is going somewhere training related,
Somewhere,
right?
somewhere.
Exactly. So it made me think about the power of observation in our training as well. And I posted a question about that yesterday as well. Like, what was your one takeaway from this challenge? And we'll chat about that a little bit more. But, we were in the process of a season review the other day, talking about how do we as coaches conduct a season review. And I was thinking about all the things that we as individuals don't think about, that power of observation. What goes into your season? And, for the past 8 months, I've been trying to tell people, don't put so much emphasis on an FTP test. Think of other ways to evaluate yourself. So we've got subjective, objective. What are your thoughts on our season review?
Yeah,
See, it did go somewhere.
It did. And yes, Lorri and I were part of this conversation with a bunch of other coaches that were involved in this, and just kind of how do we look at a season review. I thought it was really interesting because what I really saw was some of the different coaches' view on what they see, what sticks out to them, right? And I think what it is, a lot of this data that we get and stuff like that is data is only useful if you have a question.
Right.
Data doesn't tell you anything. It answers the question that you have. Oh, I wonder what this, or maybe I'll start to lead to other questions and things like that. So I thought that was really, really good. For me, I was really kind of caught up in the compliance part of it. Why were you compliant or not compliant? Like that aspect. And it just wasn't structured, so you couldn't be compliant.
Yeah. When we talk about compliance by the way, in training, what does that mean?
Yeah, I'll talk about that 1 second. But you came in with a comment of it was emotional.
Yeah.
Right. You came in with you were just burned out.
Yeah.
Right. We're all looking at
I won. I had the right answer.
Where you were just hey, you were just burned out, emotionally burned out, something along that lines. Right. So I think that's how do coaches kind of come at this? And I think that's, I don't think what separates you and I think, but I'm actually going to come at things from a data perspective first and then come emotional. I feel like you come emotional and then the data kind of supports your kind of claim, right? So we're both using both sides. It's just which direction you come at it. Compliance to me, and I was going to say this in the meeting, I didn't get the chances, compliance to me is the athlete's job.
Yeah.
My job is to put that path there, right? To come up with that plan. That's me holding my end of the table up. Your end of the table is compliance.
Yeah.
Right.
And do the thing.
Do the things that we set out to do together. And now if you can't comply, then there needs to be another conversation of what the plan is. I can't create something that you can't comply to, but if you say you're going to comply to this, then I expect you to comply to it. Right. And it only works if you do it. Right. I always say, you can write the best program in the world, but the person only does 60% of the work. Well, you're going to fail. This is based on you doing 90% of the work, we'll say.
And I think first you have to figure out though why someone isn't compliant, right? Is it because I was unrealistic in my goal setting and I really can't train 6 days a week because I don't get a day off because the one day I'm not training, I'm doing something different. I'm already committed to a strength coach, or in my case, I work on my feet in my bike fit studio. That's not a day off. That's physical.
Well, somebody posted in the comments that they couldn't do the challenge because they only have 45 minutes a day,
right,
during the week, and so they were this challenge. I can't do this challenge because it's asking for an hour for the most part.
Yeah,
how many times does that happen to your personal clients? They tell you they can do. Oh, I have an hour a day to work out. I'm okay, but how long does it take you to get to the gym? And then you got to shower and stuff after the gym and get to work. So that hour that you think you have is really 45 minutes. And if you tell me you have 45 minutes compared to an hour, I'm going to plan differently for that 45 minutes than I would for an hour. So let's just be honest about what we can accomplish. And I think that's the hardest part is people want to plan for what they think they can do rather than plan for what they know they can do.
Right. I had to get real with myself and plan in my meals because I have, I have clients, meetings, all these things. I would slot in my exercise. And then I wouldn't put in time, like you said, for the prep, for the mobility work, for the dressing, for the pumping the tires, whatever I had to do. And I was okay, I have to get real about this. If I have an hour workout, it's a 2-hour commitment. So yeah, and that's been a good lesson for me being coached again. And I think, at Home Fitness, that's all about, you have to have that schedule. That's why people get up at 4 a.m.
I would always say
you all.
it's best to plan for less time and end up with
Yeah.
more than it is to try
Yeah.
to plan for more time and end up with less. Like from a coaching perspective, I'd rather you tell me you have 6 hours a week and then you turn out to have 8 hours.
Hmm.
Like so much better, right? Like I can
Yeah.
add stuff to this, or we can add things that you can change. It's
Hmm.
really hard to knock a program down, especially from
It
an
is.
athlete perspective, right? Like if we're empowering you to make choices, for this person who couldn't do an hour, if we had the time, or if that was, to say, all right, well, if you are going to break this workout down
Hmm.
from 60 to 45, this is what you would do. That's a
Yeah,
hard thing to learn, right? Like
it is.
that's coaching kind of. But if you're like, well, I got 45 minutes and then you end up with an hour, that's really easy. Be like,
Yeah.
hey, stay
Do
on
an
the bike
extra
for a little
15
bit,
minutes of endurance.
do an extra interval, do an extra,
Yeah.
yeah, do an extra one of those intervals, or do an extra 15 minutes at zone two, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a pretty easy thing to
Yeah.
do. So I'd say for to help compliance, it's best to always underestimate your time rather than
Hmm.
overestimate your time.
And I would also say, and back to that one comment of, gee, I didn't have enough time, always reach out to your coach, whether that is in a
Hmm.
group situation or an individual situation, and just say, hey, I want to do this and I can't quite be realistic with my schedule and commit to that much time. How do I modify? Because if nothing else, one of the conversations I was having with one of the Team Wilpers groups was kind of about Team Wilpers and what we do. And a lot of comments were about, hey, I like the fact that we have some flexibility. We don't get kicked out of a program if we can't comply. We don't, if I need to modify or if I choose another class, that's okay. And it is okay. When we look at, and with Peloton, it's so easy because I look at what is the intent of the workout? If I've got a 45-minute endurance ride, maybe I can do a 30-minute endurance ride instead, or an hour, I could do 45. So it's easy to make those modifications. And so I would say in the future, always reach out and communicate that to whoever is responsible for your schedule, whether it's your boss or your spouse or your coach. So yeah. Um, so here's the other interesting thing, right? So when we talk about compliance, we were in the context of reviewing a season. What are the things that we look at when we're evaluating the success of my whole season? In the outdoor sporting world, the endurance world, we typically think of things on a season basis. Indoors, it's all forever. It's just infinite. So, but what do you think? What do we look at? We talked about objective versus subjective. So, what are the things that are important for me to evaluate about myself? Because I think self-evaluation is a big part.
Yeah, I think the first one should always be subjective. I think it
Okay.
should always be subjective first, right? How do
Yeah.
you feel about the season? How do you
Hmm.
feel it went? Right? Do you feel like you were strong enough? Do you feel like you did what you set out to do this year? Right? I think that's always number one. Um, and like for me, like this past year was not a great year,
Yeah.
right? Like it was not. Like I had a couple big events. I was so in those events for the most part, but just even riding in general, riding with my friends, like I felt weak. I didn't feel strong on certain things. Right. So it took me a little while to sit back and be like, well, why was that? And of course,
Hmm.
if I look at the data, it's very easy to see, well, my ride volume was down. Well, why was my ride volume down? Right.
I
All
had
these
this go
things.
on in my life, or yeah.
Exactly. Or just change of life, right? Like we had talked
Hmm.
about a couple weeks ago where I'm not part of a racing team that was racing on a
Yeah.
weekly basis. And for me, racing is very important to have on the schedule because it keeps me honest throughout the year,
Hmm.
right? It doesn't let me fall off and take breaks. This year I only had a
Yeah.
couple big events that were months apart,
Yeah.
right? And you can be like, I can slack off a little bit or take a little bit longer for recovery. So the data helps me understand why I didn't feel so good and why
Hmm.
subjectively I felt like it wasn't a great year. And then I can look at the data and be like, oh, yeah, no, it wasn't a great year because of these issues. Like here in Vermont, like your VO2 max has to be on point because
Yeah.
every climb is that 3 to 7 minute, 8 minute. So if you're on a group ride, like you better be ready to go really hard for 5 to 8 minutes and
Or
then
by group
keep
ride.
pushing or buy a group. And I always say is like, someone better open up the screen door because I'm about to blow through the back porch, right? Like I'm out the back quick on those things
Yeah.
because I haven't been doing those. And in New York City, the riding there is all about 90-second power,
Those little bumps.
right? Like
Those little
little
surges.
bumps, little 90 seconds, like things like
Yeah.
that, which I'm typically good at. Like that's my
Yeah.
kind of wheelhouse there. So like here, like I sat down at the end of this year being like, man, yeah, my long distance races weren't great, but my 5-minute power locally really sucked. That's
Yeah,
because I was training for long distance stuff too, right? I wasn't doing
right.
a lot of that. And is that who I want to be next year?
Yeah.
What's my
So part of
priority?
your season review is leading you into next season,
Oh,
which is
100. Why,
important.
why do a review if you're not going to build
Right.
off it for the next year,
I
right? Like,
think the other important aspect of this, though, is we should review throughout the season as well. I mean, you can
oh,
mitigate
yes.
and create change if you need to, but say you end your season on not such a great note. You go through, you have your big goal races, and maybe you don't get the result that you wanted at the end. Maybe you peaked too early. Maybe you got burnt out, whatever. Maybe you just had a bad day. But if I go through with each training cycle and each event that I do, and I write some notes, it doesn't even have to be formal, it doesn't have to be a lot, but I can just, you know, feel that sense in my brain of what I felt like when I was doing that, or things that I learned, improvements I could make,
Well,
nutritional changes, all of that.
I definitely learned two things on that call that we had.
Yeah.
Um, I learned that the guy who was presenting is exactly like me.
Yes.
Like if you looked at our years, exactly the same. Came out of the winter really strong. I had a great 12-hour mountain bike race, and I was like, "Oh, I'm going to live on these laurels," right? And I was probably a little burnt at that point in time, right? So
Hmm.
that was number one. Is like, and I didn't structure my summer, right? I was very unstructured because I was like, "Oh, it's all long." So I definitely learned that he and I are very similar in a lot of ways in that way. Number two, what I learned is the biggest mistake both of us make is we don't have coaches.
We've talked about that so many times.
100%.
But
Because
I can
I can
also say,
justify anything I do every day,
I know, I
right?
know.
Because I can put justification to it. Now, if I had a coach who was like, "Yeah, I know you want to go ride long and look at the leaves, but the fact of the matter is, you got to mix in these 4 5 minute hard efforts when you hit these hills. Like,
Right.
got to do it." And then if I don't do it, for them to be able to call me out and be like, "You're not doing this. Like, how do you expect it to get better if you're not
Yeah.
doing this?" I think that, like, now is that going to change me? Am I
Maybe.
going to hire a coach? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe I'll have someone help review it a little bit,
Yeah.
or I at least have to structure it and put it in my schedule, and just being like, "You got to do this,"
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, no coach should ever self coach themselves.
Right.
No
Oh, I
athlete should
agree.
really
I
self
know,
coach
Bob.
themselves.
I don't know, Bob. I kind of have this rule. I try not to coach friends and I try not to coach partners. And because sometimes things are tough and you have to have hard conversations. I mean, that's the other piece of it. It's like nepotism, right? Do I want to be nicer to Brian just because we're colleagues? But maybe we could do a little block where we coach each other. I was in the same boat, right? So I, similar to the speaker, I had this huge amount of volume. I did winter base camp, huge amount of volume. Went to Mallorca, was riding there. It wasn't super high intensity, and then I started working with my coach, and I had great compliance throughout the year. I had a couple, but I was probably 95% compliant. But
Awesome.
then I know, but then my last race of the year, which was nationals, and I'm like, "You need to give me a program." She's like, "No, just do unstructured stuff." I'm like, "No, I need a program. I don't leave me to myself." And she gave me a program, and of course I didn't do it because I was burned out at that point. I was like, "I'm done." And so I have not had a coach now for a few weeks. I hired a strength coach for the winter instead of a cycling coach. And I'm barely riding my bike. I'm like, "Oh, I'll go run today. That'll fit in my calendar." Yeah, that's great. But I am lifting, which has been already. I'm seeing a huge difference in just how my body feels. Like I feel younger, and my back feels so much stronger, and I feel taller, and all the good things that being on a bike and breaking your body down over years and years is. So that's been good. I'm also sore all the time. So this is a question for all you guys. Jeff's just talking to himself about, hi, Jeff, welcome from court. But I want to say hi to Will. Will and I had a great bike fit the other day. We did a follow up session, got some new stuff, and we're chatting through nutrition. So he's been doing great with his training. And then somebody else came in. Oh, yeah, Bob is here, and Jeff is here. And you had to represent your mother in law in a traffic case. Yeah, right. Don't do that. Definitely in the mother in law. Come on.
I'd rather coach a friend.
I'd rather coach an enemy. Anyways, I have no idea where we were going with that, but yeah. That's kind of, what was I even talking about when I started scrolling?
Strength training, I think.
Strength training. It's been
That was
great.
a big
And
question
I
for
was
them.
going to ask
Yes.
you guys a question. So I'm 4 weeks into a strength plan, and boy, am I sore all the time in random little places. And sometimes it causes a lot of fatigue. So you guys tell me, how long do you get sore when you get back to strength? I want to know what you guys think about that. But I know. Have you gotten back to
A
strength,
lot.
Brian?
I did. Yeah,
Good.
I've been back on for probably like the last 4 to 6 weeks, at
Yeah.
least 2 times a week, and
Are you
I'm
still
taking it
sore?
very at times. At times,
Okay.
if I switch up my exercises, um,
Oh,
I
she's
worked as
totally
a
switching me up.
yeah, so I worked
Yeah.
as a personal trainer. That's how
Yeah.
I first got into this whole business for like 10 years. So
Right.
there's a lot of different theories about strength training and like how you should start, and the first 6 weeks you actually have the best chance of gaining strength
Right.
because neurologically you're so in the first 6 weeks you have this neurological gain, and
Mm-hmm.
there's really two frames of thoughts about this. One, we'll look at it as doing strength, like go heavy, because if
Yeah.
you actually want to gain this strength that you won't gain later on. The other one is to gain movement, right? To
Mm-hmm.
gain actual movement pattern. So they do a lot
Abduction,
of
adduction, all those things you
yeah,
don't
like all
do
these
on the
little
bike.
smaller things. So I
My
keep things very
adductors are
basic.
killing me and my
Yeah,
left.
so I don't change my exercises for like 6 weeks. Like I'm doing
Yeah.
the same exercise I did 6 weeks ago and that will limit your soreness because you're not really bringing in new things necessarily. And as you add more weight, those new things will kind of kick in. So I definitely had a couple of weeks of soreness, but I went super light in my legs, lower body wise, just
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't want that soreness because then it affects my riding. And then I'm like, I'm going
Yeah.
to skip my workouts, right? I'm going
Right.
to skip my strength training workouts because I don't want it to affect my rides.
Yeah.
So I've been very cautious not to get
Mm.
super sore.
Yeah.
And it's actually made me more compliant,
Well,
actually.
it's made me
So
exactly. I'm doing a lot of zone 2 stuff right now, which is what I should be doing. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's really easy to go zone 2 right now. And I never could go zone 2 because I always felt like I had a little more in the tank. But
yeah, but I was
it
saying
brings up a really good point.
my compliance is better in lifting because I'm not lifting heavy. If I was
Yeah.
lifting heavy and it made me sore, I wouldn't lift as much,
Yeah.
right? And
Well, if I hadn't
compliance is
paid
all
her all
about
this money, she's twice as expensive
yeah.
as my cycling coach. And I
Um,
have an expensive cycling coach. It was interesting though, because I worked as a trainer too. I don't know if you know this. I actually got a California certificate, which is 30 credits, half an associate's degree in personal fitness training and
yeah,
adaptive fitness back in the day when I then became a coach. But I, found this program and I'd gotten laid off and had nothing to do. And I was like, I'll go back to school. And I had to memorize how many muscles and bones. How did I do that? I can't think of, I'm like, what is that? Oh yeah, my ear. It's like muscles and bones. And I know the ones I know. But anyways, I remember when I first started bike racing, there was a very prevalent opinion in the sports science world that we shouldn't lift year round, that it would fatigue you for racing. And so I would do these 3 or 4 month blocks of whatever, and then I wouldn't do it. And that's a huge mistake. We know that now. Even, the young guys are running in the off season. It's like we can do specific things at specific times, but strength training for us, especially as an older adult, is super important. So, anyways, I encourage you all to, I know Maggie does. Maggie, you never get sore. I'm convinced of that. You just do everything. She's like a constant whirling dervish of movement. But yes, Donna, foam rolling, yay. Lindy Lou, you don't have to quit cycling if you lift strength. Just saying,
that's
you
right.
can do both. Yeah,
Priorities
but I know, and I love
doesn't go away.
Linda. I love you made a comment about realizing that you prefer outdoor cycling, and I think that's great. And I know your time in the year is limited now because of your weather, so yeah, get out there and enjoy it while you still can, and then we'll see you on the Peloton soon, right? I know I had canceled my Peloton membership, by the way, and because I wasn't using it in the summer, and I just realized I apparently paid for it this month, so I'm going to start using it. Anyways, anything else about this challenge? I encourage everybody, post your lessons. I put that post up yesterday, and
I thought it was great. That
I
post was
did too.
awesome. The comments were amazing. Like how many
Yeah,
different things came about. Like
yeah,
I thought it was great. I really enjoyed reading the comments.
yeah. More than anything else, one of the things that I'm always impressed with is when we are open-minded and people are like, wow, I didn't realize I could do this thing, but if I trust the science, meaning if my FTP is set correctly, then yes, I can do that thing. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's pretty awesome. So what else do we have going on? that was our topic for the day, talking about season review and year end. And we're just going to jump into, we need to teach Brian, by the way. I listened to your 20-minute podcast where you said, oh, I got to talk for 14 minutes and Lorri didn't interrupt me. I was like, wait a minute.
And I turned off my do not disturb. I turned my do not disturb on so I don't get a phone call and knock me off. Like that's what happened last week.
I know. I was on the edge. You got through most of everything. It was good.
Yes,
and for those of you who have never done anything like this, I would be terrified to sit here and talk to myself. I am so thankful that we get to talk to each other.
It's the worst.
Yeah, it is. So I felt awesome that I raced a duathlon and I went out to lunch and ate some poke, and I ended up with a little belly issue last week. So, yeah, that's what I blame it on. So thank you for covering, and thank you everybody who wrote a note saying, "Oh, you're sick. I'm so sorry."
I did tell Lorri, my daughter was home that day, my 14-year-old daughter, and I tried to convince her to come on as my guest.
Yeah,
and talk about her riding the Peloton. It was a hard no. She was like, "No, absolutely not."
Yeah,
it would have been great. She's funny. She's very charismatic.
Yeah. I know. Bob, if I were infinitely wealthy, I would never cancel anything. But as we all know, these automatic subscriptions that come out, I'm like, oh yeah, you're paying for Spotify. You only use that when you run. You haven't run in 6 months. You should probably cancel that and save that $7 a month or whatever. So yes, as much as I would love to support Peloton all the time, I finally did. I was like, yeah, I haven't used any of the content in a few months because I do other things on my own, right? You can exercise outside the Peloton world. Anyways, what I was going to say, Brian, OD means on demand. So when you look at the Peloton content, yeah, there are encore classes, and those are the ones that are created simply to be broadcast. They never have an audience live. They're live classes, meaning it's a scheduled time. Everybody jumps in. On demand is when they put it on the live calendar. So there's all kinds of interesting stuff. But yeah, that's about it. Anyways, so we are only on demand this weekend. So we've got some folks that are going to Hincapie in Greenville, which, by the way, Greenville was decimated. They're doing a huge fundraiser. We'll post up that link if you're interested. They have changed the event. It should still be a good event, but it's really hard in the middle of a disaster to also have support for a huge route that goes through 2 states and that kind of thing. So we are, those of us who are riding Peloton on Saturday will do an on-demand 2-hour. There you go. There's your big event. See if you can get 41 kilometers out of that, or 41 miles. Should be able to get either of those. We'll ride at 6, 9, 12, and 3 Eastern time. And then those of you, and by the way, sorry for the confusion. I had also put FTP test, and they said, we're doing a 2-hour FTP test. No, there was an or. It just didn't quite make it that way in the text. You have the option if you want to test again, or maybe wait a week and test again, right? Do the 1 week FTP prep. Or get out and ride your bike outside, do 41 miles, 41 kilometers, or you can do that inside too. But that will conclude our fall challenge. I know, Brian.
I know.
What do you think?
Went by fast.
It did. It did. Does that mean I get to sleep in next week? Maybe.
Maybe.
Anyways, so when's our next challenge starting?
November 4th, I believe.
Yeah.
I think we get a 2-week break.
Yeah.
It's only a 2-week break, not long.
I know.
But good time to kick back, go leaf peeping.
Yeah.
Enjoy your fitness. Vote.
I have my in California, nobody votes in person. It's weird. You know, I'm from New York and I moved to California, and people poll in your house. So there are polling places that aren't public places. I had always thought, you know, it should be the church or the school or the whatever. Right. No, I'm going to Susie Jones' basement. Well, we don't have basements, but her living room, and we're going to poll. It's kind of weird. We all vote by mail here in California. So I was very excited to get my ballot the other day. And Jeff's going to be 56. You little youngin'. Good for you. We'll celebrate your birthday. And yeah, so it's a 6-week challenge. It's a transition season challenge. So let's just talk real quickly. What is the transition season? What does that mean for us?
Well, transition means transition, right? You're going from one, you're just trying to connect the belt, right? Like that's the whole kind of deal, right? You're just trying to connect the 2 ends. Mm-hmm. And if you It's time to pull back. That's really the key, right? Is you got to pull back. You have to lose some fitness. That's the key in transition is actually losing
I know.
fitness, right?
See, I'm on
And
plan.
I know. Um, and the whole idea, right, is 2 steps forward, 1 step back,
Yeah.
right? We're taking 2 steps forward during the season. We have to take 1 step back. Now we're still 1 step ahead of where we were a year ago. And that's how we build from year to year to year. Set that new baseline, that new homeostasis is higher than it was a year ago. Does that mean my FTP is higher than it was a year ago? No,
Yeah.
no, doesn't mean that, right? It might be the same as it was a year ago, but my VO2 max is higher, or my capacity is higher, or any of these other things that are going to allow me to build even a higher FTP
Yeah.
throughout the year. Yeah, transition is always it's kind of a tough time,
Yeah.
right? Because
We used to call it the
it's
off season.
yeah, yeah, and then no one
It's
ever
like,
took it
no.
off.
Right.
So,
Or the non, because
um,
that's where cyclocross came from. It was like, oh, we need something to do for the 4
yeah,
months
we
that
got to
we don't
race.
race our bikes. Let's go
We
race
got
our
to race our
bikes.
bikes in a fun,
Yeah.
unstructured way of
I
jumping over
know.
stuff.
Where
Um,
I have the worst
yeah,
scar of my life was from my very first cyclocross race. We had UCI regulation. UCI is Union Cycliste International, right? So the international governing body, and they have a rule for cyclocross barriers, the things you jump over, that they're a certain height, and it's like what 56 centimeters or something crazy.
something like that.
Yeah, well, it's right below my knee. I can tell you because I have a scar from my very first race. We had a set of was it double or triple barriers around a turn, and I wasn't the best at mounting or dismounting in my first season of cyclocross, and I kind of nailed it. And my teammate who was standing there cheering me, she was like, "Great dismount, Lorri!" And guess I got distracted and I hit the barrier on the last go and sliced like you took a razor almost all the way down to my ankle. So I have this
Station. Oh,
really nice scar. I was off the bike for 3 months because I got this huge hematoma. They couldn't, you have no flesh on your shin.
nothing.
Yeah. And so they can't stitch it, they can't do anything. I finished the race. I wasn't last, I finished. But there was blood everywhere. Anyways.
And if
Um,
you have not seen cyclocross, anybody watching this, YouTube it and watch cyclocross. It's got to
oh, it's
be, in my
awesome.
opinion, it's the most entertaining to watch.
Hmm.
Right? Like it's just fun, nonstop action, and it
Yeah.
just a little chaotic. Like trying to
Yeah.
figure out where the heck the course is.
Oh,
Like how
yeah,
do they go
you
in a
described
circle
it
and
last night,
spin?
right? Like you were
And
playing in your yard as a kid. Was that
yes,
you or was it a
exactly right.
different
Yeah,
podcast I was listening to? Yeah.
might have. I definitely have said that in the past.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like it's like just me in my backyard, like on my BMX bike, like riding all over the place and trying to
Right. You
jump
ride
over
up the
stuff.
curb and you
Yeah.
go down the stairs and you run up the stairs.
And
And
it's
yeah.
funny is like that style of racing actually suits me really well,
Mhm.
right? It's probably like think about it. I'm a mountain biker for like the technical skills, and I love riding road bikes too, right? Mountain biking is all this, and we talked about last time is like that specificity, like the
Right.
style that it takes. Like mountain biking and cyclocross are same kind of energy system,
Yeah.
um, but it's like the worst time of the year
Yeah.
because it's like it's transition time. I can't be racing my bike
I know.
from September to December and then start in January again. Like, there's no way, man.
Yeah.
I
Well, and
wish.
here in California, it's very well. One thing we've seen is people do now specialize in cyclocross, which you never used to. I mean, it was your off-season training,
Mhm.
and I think developed because weather wasn't consistent for road cycling or for mountain biking, and so we had this circus basically. Um, but yeah, in California, you start the cross season in August, and it's 110 degrees. I mean, it's a dusty sport out here, and we start road racing in January. The first race of the year is January 1st, and it usually goes through the end of September or the first week in October. That's a very long race season. And
Mhm.
then you're just overlapping with cross. So people now specialize a lot. But yeah, transition season. How do we get from where we are right now to where we want to be? And this is what I'm kind of excited about this challenge because at first I was like, this is going to be boring. The next challenge, it's just going to be, endurance and whatever. Well, no, it's not just endurance. We're going to do a little intensity every week. We're going to do a couple things off the bike every week, which I'm excited about because I think as healthy humans who are aging, whether you're 20 and you're aging or you're 60 and you're aging, I think spending some time doing something a little different than what you've been doing is really important. It's important for our brain, for our body, getting some impact. So we're gonna work on some weaknesses with some mobility work as well. So I had to wrap my brain around it, but I'm pretty excited now that I think it'll be fun and give us a little something different to do and give your mind and body a break and get ready for January when we jump in to our big
Back
season
in.
again. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. Years just go by so quick. Old people always say that. Now I'm saying it. What's that tell you?
Mhm.
It goes by, time goes by. Anyways,
One less season, right?
yeah.
That's
Oh,
I know.
on that note, no.
Although if we
Yes,
train well, we gain seasons as we age too, right? So
right.
I guess it's
I
like
know.
one half less season.
Exactly. But yeah, we'll figure out the schedule for our athlete briefings going forward, and so you'll see us. We won't be completely gone, but we'll probably. I think we didn't discuss this, but Brian, I think we're not going to do our next 2 Wednesday mornings. We'll see where it goes. And good luck to everybody this weekend, whatever event you're doing or whatever ride you're doing or FTP test or any of that. Prepare, put it in perspective. Remember, it's one day on the bike, so that's all good. Jeff says, yeah, do your bike skills and your running and your lifting. And whatever you do, though, don't go out and like try to run for an hour. You're like, oh, I can do an hour of bike. I can do an hour run. No, you can't.
No,
Start slowly. And yeah, anyways, thank
15,
you
20
all.
minutes max.
Yeah. Anyways, Brian, it's been awesome
It's fun.
hosting with you. I know it's good. And we'll see y'all in a couple weeks.
All right. See ya. Bye bye.